Hey, before the video starts, I recommend playing the Ancient Gods DLC for Doom Eternal since this video contains spoilers for the DLC. Doom Eternal is considered to be one of the best FPS games ever made, and for a lot of great reasons. I even made a 90-minute video explaining why I love this game so much. One of the things I was excited about post-launch was the single-player expansions that were said to release. Doom is no stranger to expansions, with the master levels for Doom 2 or the Doom 3 expansions, and a single-player expansion for Doom 2016 was heavily requested but never came. Though id Software decided to deliver on that request with this game. First with The Ancient Gods Part 1, and then Part 2. I didn't play Part 1 back when it released, as I wanted to wait until Part 2 released so I could play through the whole DLC as one. Which, from what I've heard, may not have been the best idea, since with the recent patch to the game, they've changed some enemy placements with Part 1, and it isn't as difficult. However, I still think my video is an accurate description of the DLC itself. Also bearing in mind that this isn't a full-on review or critique, since I've already talked about Doom Eternal's gameplay and mechanics, and everything about the game in extensive detail. So I'm only going to talk about the DLC and what it adds and whether I like them or don't like them. So, is the DLC any good? Gameplay-wise, the DLC is pretty good because it's Doom Eternal gameplay, and we all know how great the gameplay loop of Doom Eternal is. It had been 11 months since I last played this game, and I missed the combat so much. It was great to get back into it. The Ancient Gods Part 1 is a pretty fun expansion. The levels are all unique and fun to traverse, and the combat arenas are all very well designed. They all have different levels and different variations on how you traverse them whilst defeating the enemies, and I like the unique visual styles of each area. However, the new enemies are kind of a mixed bag. The Bloodmaker is cool. It has shields that no weapon aside from the BFG can penetrate, and you can only kill it when it starts an attack, as its shields disable during attacks. There is an invisible Whiplash now. It's the same enemy, but it's invisible. Not much else. There are these weird turret eyes, which can be a bit tedious. And there is this new spirit mechanic, where the summoner from Doom 2016 can possess other demons which buffs them. If you kill it, then it'll just transfer to another body, unless you use the microwave beam of the plasma gun. Because that weapon mod was so useless, they had to find a way to use it. I like the idea of the mechanic, but the fact that the only way to deal with the spirit is the microwave beam, which slows you down and forces you to focus on one enemy when others are attacking, is kind of annoying. Even worse, it requires like 100 or so ammo to destroy them, and the plasma gun shares ammo with the ballista, so it can be annoying to almost kill it and then have a small bit of energy short, and then it possesses another demon and you have to start the whole thing over again. If you could kill the spirit with any weapon, then this wouldn't be a problem. But you can only kill it with a specific mod of a specific weapon. Which I know some people might argue that specific weapons in Doom Eternal have specific strengths against enemies. However, the base game never forces you into specific playstyles. It's just some playstyles are better than others and some are more recommended. You're never forced to just use one specific weapon for one specific enemy. There's always at least a couple options. Here, you don't have a couple options, you have one option. Other than that, the gameplay is pretty much the same as the base game, and it's a lot of fun. Difficulty-wise though, I wasn't disappointed. I played on Ultra Violence and had a fairly challenging time. I don't know if I'd say it's more challenging than the main game, but to be fair, I'm playing the game after the patch that changed some of the enemy parameters and some of the enemy placements, so the DLC might have been much more difficult back when it first released than it is now, which is what I've heard. But even now, playing it, I started a fair few deaths. The final boss, Samu Maker, is really cool though. His attacks are fun to dodge and the boss has multiple stages. Plus, it's the only time where the spirit mechanic actually works well. You have two spirit demons that you need to defeat, and you have to choose on how to take them down. It's a fun boss fight overall. Story-wise, the DLC consists of the Slayer transferring Samuel Hayden's consciousness into the Seraphim, and taking the Dark Lord's life sphere to the Dark Lord, so that the Dark Lord can take physical form, and so the Slayer can kill him.
The Dark Lord is the leader of Hell's armies, not a king, but a warrior of the Dark Realm. The fiercest among them, as only the strongest could rule the demons. It is you, in their world.
Part 1 then ends. There are a lot of interesting codex pages to read up upon about the lore, but otherwise not much happens story-wise in this DLC, mainly because it's setting up Ancient Gods Part 2. Part 2 includes some new gameplay elements, first being the hammer, which replaces the crucible, and somewhat works better, somewhat doesn't. On the one hand, I like that you can use it more often than the crucible, because the crucible is a fun weapon in Doom Eternal. However, the fact that there's barely any pickups through it, like the entire game, makes it so you don't really get to use it all that much, and I think there could have been better ways to do it. And in a way, the hammer sort of acts as a solution, because instead of pickups, you regain energy for the hammer by glory killing, or shooting weak points. I like this idea more than just pickups, because it means you get to use the hammer more often. However, the fact is, you only need to do 2 glory kills or 2 weak points to get the hammer back. And while the hammer isn't exactly a damaging weapon to higher enemies, it still stuns them, and it can be abused a bit too much, to be honest. I think they could have at least doubled the necessary requirements to get the hammer, like for example 4 glory kills or 4 weak points. That way then it's not as unbalanced and not as easily abusable. But other than that, it is a lot of fun to smash into a group of enemies and cause chaos, and the cartoon sound effect that comes along with it is very funny. In terms of enemies, there are technically more enemies added, but they are just alternate versions of already existing ones. Stone imps are just imps that require more specific methods to kill, since they have immunities to certain attacks. Riot shielders or chain gunners are just shield guys that you can only kill from the back. There are these soldier guys in the last level which just feel thrown in. Like, all of them die in one shot no matter the difficulty, and to be honest, they feel unfinished. It feels like they developed some basic AI for soldiers and just threw it in the last level. Armored barons are just barons that have armor that you either shoot off with the plasma gun or shoot a weak point when it attacks. It works pretty similar to the Bloodmaker and thus doesn't add much gameplay wise. There are these small zombies that die easily but buff any enemy standing around it when it dies, which is a cool addition, but once again it's just the same enemy. There is this cursed prowler which can curse you and stop you from dashing and locking on to it until you blood punch it, which is annoying, because oftentimes it'll just fly around the map and it's hard to catch up to it, and you might have to focus on other enemies while you do it. The new enemies are alright I guess, but they don't add much to the gameplay, and I think more could have been done. I understand this DLC was made during the pandemic, and obviously designing stuff for games wasn't very easy. But at the same time, it is a bit of a letdown that the DLC doesn't add much gameplay-wise. Other than that though, it's a really fun DLC, and adds a couple new levels to the game, and I had a blast from beginning to end. It's just that I was hoping more would be added gameplay-wise. I didn't find this nearly as challenging as the base game or the previous DLC, and I only died a handful of times, as most sections were fairly easy. And coming from a game known for its challenge, and a series known for its challenge, it was a little disappointing. The levels have new ways to traverse them with the meat hook, but otherwise they just play like your standard Doom Eternal level. Also, I don't think the arenas are as cool as Ancient Gods Part 1. Ancient Gods Part 1 has more interesting arenas that require different levels of elevation and different ways to traverse, whereas Ancient Gods Part 2, all the arenas kind of feel the same. And it's not that they're bad arenas by any means, but they all kind of provide the same experience. When I think back to Doom Eternal, I remember specific arenas, because they all played differently, and had unique fights in them. Whereas with Ancient Gods Part 2, not many of them are very memorable. I'm also a little disappointed with the final boss. There's only one way to fight him. You wait until he glows green to attack, and then you shoot him, and if he manages to hit you, then he steals health from you. There's only one way to fight him, there's no interesting ways to be creative or do anything interesting with him. You just bait him into an attack and then shoot him. The reason why the Marauder works much better is because there's a lot of creative ways you can take that guy down. This guy is just the Marauder, except all the cool things you can do with him are gone, and you just bait him into attacks. And considering like this is the final boss of the game, and the DLC and of this storyline. This is kind of disappointing. Like, if this was another boss fight in the game, it would still be pretty kind of sucky, but like, at least it wouldn't be the final boss. Like, the final boss of the first DLC is better and is more challenging than this one. In fact, I'd say every boss fight from Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal is better than this one. This is the weakest boss fight out of the new series of games. Look at any other boss fight from Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal, and they all have more interesting attacks and more interesting ways to fight them and more interesting arenas. This is just a big circle. And it doesn't even feel satisfying to be him, because he's not even hard, he's just tedious. Story-wise, the DLC consists of the Slayer heading to the Dark Lord to kill him, as the laws of Hell say that if the Dark Lord is defeated in combat, then all of his creations outside of Hell disappear, meaning that the demons outside Hell will be gone. You may also notice that the Dark Lord looks just like the Slayer. There is a plot twist revealing that the Dark Lord came before the Father, and that you, the Slayer, were made in his image.
He is the first being, and my creator. When he fell, I ascended.
They lied to you, Slayer. Imora and its people would have been perfect, if not for the treachery of my servants. They sealed me away, stole my power and name. And now, the time has come for a reckoning.
All of this concludes in a badass cutscene where the Slayer strikes down the Dark Lord.
Tell me, have you nothing to say to your creator before you strike him down? No.
And every demon outside of Hell fades away. But since the Slayer was also a creation of the Dark Lord, he falls unconscious. I don't know why he doesn't just die. Why does all the other demons die, but he just falls unconscious? Is it just because he's not a demon, and that's why he just... I don't know. There is probably a good reason, but it's not explained here. And then the Slayer gets locked away in a sarcophagus, mirroring the beginning of Doom 2016, and he will only be reawakened when he is needed. To be honest, I like this as the ending of the Slayer storyline. It basically says that the Doom series is one big loop, and that the Slayer will awaken when he is needed and destroy the demons before then going back to indefinite slumber until his skills are needed again. And I like that. The Slayer is destined to endlessly fight the forces of Hell for eternity, which is why the game is named Doom Eternal, because the Slayer's fight is eternal. Eternal violence. He's basically damage control that comes in to fix terrible situations, and after everything he's done in the last two games and the DLC, he now gets a rest until he is needed again. Now, it hasn't been confirmed that this will be the last we see of the Slayer, but it has been confirmed that this is the end of the storyline that the 2016 game started. So if another Doom game gets made, it will probably be a new storyline. And if this is really the last we're going to see of the storyline, then I'm pretty satisfied with it. However, I do think they are ending it a bit too soon. I do think we could have at least got another full-on game that explored the story and then ended the story in that game. Because otherwise, there are a bunch of interesting things in this storyline lore-wise that aren't going to be explored anymore, I guess, and that's kind of disappointing. So I wish they stuck with this storyline for a bit longer, because it's not like they're running out of stuff to do with the universe. There's a lot in the Doom universe. But otherwise, I am happy with the Slayer's ending. Some people didn't like the plot twist that the Slayer was a creation of the Dark Lord. I kinda like it. I like the idea that he was made to fight the Dark Lord in his image, because the only thing that could beat the Dark Lord is his doppelganger. And I like that the Slayer's story comes full circle, and he finally achieves his goal of wiping the demons from the galaxy. They now reside in Hell. They'll probably break out again at some point, but for now, the universe is demon-free, and I kind of like how abrupt the ending is as well. So story-wise, I am pretty happy with where the story goes and how the Slayer's arc ends, but I do think there is a bit more that could have been done with this universe and the storyline before it ended. Music-wise, it's a shame that Mick Gordon isn't back to compose the soundtrack, but the music by Andrew Holschult and David Levy is pretty good. It's not as memorable, but it's really fun to listen to while slaying demons. However, it clearly wasn't mixed very well because I can barely hear the music when I'm playing the game because the sound effects are so loud. And I didn't have this issue with the base game. The music's fine with all settings turned to max. The music plays just fine, but in the DLC I have to lower the settings in order to hear the music properly. So I don't know what's going on there. Overall, the Ancient Gods Part 1 and 2 are really good expansions, but could have added more to the combat, and I think it is ending the storyline a bit too soon. It's nice to have more content to play with, but at the end of the day it is pretty much just more Doom Eternal, which is fun, but there is a lot of potential that hasn't yet been reached that could have been. Still though, I had so much fun going back to this game and experiencing new content. I'm happy that nearly 30 years later, Doom is still kicking strong in terms of content, and I do look forward to where this franchise goes next, but I also wouldn't mind if Eternal was the last game. I don't want this franchise to become burnt out. I hope id Software's next project isn't Doom related. They do an amazing job with Doom, but I also want to see them do other stuff. Also, some new stuff has been added to Doom Eternal since I last spoke about it. The main menu music has changed, for example. I like the new track, but I prefer the old one, and I wish there was an option to switch it back. One of the things I wanted in the original video from a year ago was a cheat code that turned the enemies into their 1990s sprites. While I didn't get exactly that, you can play the game in the same pixelated style of the original Doom. A lot of new skins and new cosmetics have been added, a lot of them being either really funny or really badass, and I don't think I gave Battle Mode enough credit in the original video. I do stand by the statement that Battle Mode shouldn't have been the only multiplayer offering, but I have been having a lot of fun with it recently. It is a great mode, but as I said, it's the only multiplayer mode in the game, so multiplayer wise there's not much content, even if it is good content. I also do want to thank my viewers for watching me talk about this series for over 3 years now. Doom is one of my all-time favourite franchises, and I've loved talking about pretty much every game in the series, except Doom 64, which I will talk about at a later point. But other than that, I've pretty much covered everything in this series. The original 90s games, Doom 3, Resurrection of Evil, Doom 2016, Doom Eternal, and the DLCs. There are some small spin-off games like Doom RPG, but I probably won't ever cover those. So until a new game comes out, I've talked about pretty much everything I could with this series. So I want to thank everyone for all the support for these years. Anyway, yeah, The Ancient Gods is pretty good, and is a good conclusion to the Slayer saga. I am a little unsatisfied with the gameplay, and the fact that the story is ending so soon, but I still had a lot of fun, and I like where they went.